News Talk ZB Weekend Collective. Tim Roggs for Tim Beveridge here at 7 minutes past 4. Thank you as always for listening as we count down to the most exciting or most anticipated Super Rugby final in I don't know how many years. Even Bevo's interested in this one. It's been a long time in between drinks for Bevo with Super Rugby, but you're loving it. Sell out at Eden Park. People even standing. Tickets they're selling so you can stand in the rain for $120.
Yeah, I think I'd rather just... I'll happily watch it. Bits of it anyway.
What does that mean?
Well, because I've got kids and stuff,
Right,
and I'll be
okay.
putting them to bed and tucking them in, and you know.
That's
yeah.
all right. But
So
what you're saying is that
I'll tune in.
you're slightly interested. And that's an indication of how big the game is. Anyway, we'll have more about that later on. Let's talk property because it is time for the One Roof Radio Show. This is our weekly property hour and the only hour on New Zealand radio dedicated to talking all the different things to do with property. And our special guest has been on several times before. She started up Property Apprentice. Her name is Debbie Roberts. She's with us now. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Excellent. And one of the things we want to talk about is, given all the headlines about the softening of the property market, which I don't think we have to panic about, but everyone who is looking to buy, who already has a house, wants the same thing, is that you want your house that you currently have that you'd be selling to be magically the sort of property that's holding its value right now, and you want the houses that you want to buy to be fantastically the properties which have just had huge drops. Are there certain types of properties that are holding their value more than others in the current market? Debbie?
Yes, I would say that the best. Can you hear me properly? Yeah. Okay, cool.
That's all right. We just moved that microphone a little
adjust
closer.
me
We're in a
as we
different
go.
studio, so we
Here we
just
are.
yeah, there we go.
Okay, so I think it's more about the areas as opposed to the different types of property that are going to hold their value. You know, we tend to find that that houses in the main centres in New Zealand tend to do better in property downturns than in the smaller regions, for example. So, and especially if we go into a recession, those small towns in the regions are going to suffer a lot more than others. So we do see in the main centres as well. So by main centres, I'm talking about Auckland, Hamilton, Tauranga, Wellington, Christchurch and Dunedin. And so 6 main centres. But within that, the low income suburbs, they do tend to get hit harder because they often, especially in a recession, they tend to the ones that lose their jobs and things become difficult financially. But also they are quite often the areas that investors get quite heavily into, you know. So investors in a slow market like this, we go shopping and we negotiate hard. So.
Right.
So, yeah, we negotiate discounts.
So what about what most suburbs in New Zealand are like, which is that they're more in between,
Yep.
with pockets which will be higher end and then pockets which will be, there'll be state housing, rightfully so, that we mix it up. So that if you're in one of those mid-range suburbs, are there certain types of properties which are going to be holding within those mid-range suburbs in terms of house size?
I don't think so. No, I think, nobody really needs to panic. If you're looking at selling a house to buy another one, you're going to be buying and selling in the same market. So it's if you're planning on selling and then moving to another area, there could be a variation as to what level of market activity there is in one part of the country compared to the other. So, in an ideal world, you'd be selling for the best possible price in one area and negotiating like the thunder
that's what everyone
in
wants.
the area that you're purchasing in.
What about I'm quite curious about the whole apartment, the type of property as well, because there are a lot of. I see it just on my Instagram feed every time. Mind you, they must know me because I've clicked on a couple of apartment developments, and every apartment development I'm seeing going up now, they all look so desirable.
Oh, there's some amazing.
I haven't seen many where I go, that sucks. But there seem to be so many of them, and I'm wondering how a freehold property. Obviously, you pay more for a freehold property, especially in the main centres, because you've got the land and everything. Whereas you're just buying a portion of the title with the apartment. But what's the comparison in terms of properties that are going to hold their value or do better? With that general rambling in mind.
It used to be the case that people thought that houses on a section would have better long-term capital growth than units or apartments. It's not that case anymore.
Really?
Yep, not the case. So, obviously the higher the value of the property, the better the long-term capital gain, because 5% increase on $1 million property is a lot more than 5% increase on a $300,000 apartment.
Does that mean then that the question Bevo and I have had various times over the years with this show, one of the ones we're throwing out there, it's hard to come up with new ideas, but we do our best. But
No,
one of them, you're laughing at something else anyway. I took it on board.
No, I was thinking of the questions and all the answers that we've heard, and we still aren't property magnets. That's what I was.
That's also
about. Yeah.
That's also a perennial. But it's that the idea of an apartment as your entry level property, and that generally I feel that people we've had on have said no, don't do that. It shouldn't be an apartment, that the risk is higher, the rewards aren't as great. And is that thinking that's attached to the bad apartments that tended to be built before, whereas apartments being built now are light years ahead of what we were building 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
Oh, I think that's absolutely a fair comment, but the market is totally different from what it was 10, 15 years ago as well. 10 or 15 years ago, nobody was interested in buying an apartment unless they were going to buy it as a rental. People used to say, why would you want to live in the inner city? So things have changed. Our desires have changed. Now we've got people retiring into apartments because they don't want to have the big upkeep on land. So, there's lots of variability. We've got first home buyers buying inner city apartments because it's central to where they work and it's cheaper than buying in the suburbs. So it's a good stepping stone. And then further down the track, that first apartment that they purchase might become their first rental.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I don't want to give away too much. Our property of the week at the end of the hour is a penthouse, and it is. There's hardly any old penthouse, but this is definitely not any old penthouse.
Is it an old penthouse?
It is, but it isn't.
See, now I didn't know that you had a penthouse, so I'm glad I didn't go, don't buy an apartment.
Oh, look, no, I don't have a penthouse, but this is.
No, I meant as the property.
Oh, the property. Yeah.
I didn't know that. I'm glad I didn't slam apartments.
Oh, no, you could
slam
all,
because then
all
it would
like.
have provided a lovely point of contrast and be like,
But,
that's interesting.
Yeah, a bit of friction.
Yeah.
By the way, you can give us a bell at 0800 80 10 80. What properties have the best chance of holding their value in a softening market? What do you reckon? Okay, here's what I reckon. Bevo's heard this before. That's fine. I'll dress it up in a new way. That I think surely if you have a really nice entry-level property that is close to a CBD in a larger city that's under $1 million, I'm sure that's going to hold its value more than other properties because first home buyers will still want to get in. And when you're buying your first property, you don't want to be too far away from a CBD because you still like the idea of going out to bars and restaurants and not spending $100 on an Uber. So surely there's a type of property, an entry-level property, that isn't losing its value. Okay. If it's in a suburb that's not too far away from a central city. That's my uneducated guess.
So I would argue that the majority of first home buyers aren't that bothered about what's going to hold its value. They're just interested in buying a home that they can live in.
Yeah.
So most home buyers don't buy a home for the long-term capital growth. They buy something because they don't want to be paying rent forever.
I hear what you're saying, but with that in mind, that if you were selling that first home, then you shouldn't be thinking, well, I don't think it would be unreasonable to think that you'd get a decent price for it, as opposed to thinking that oh no, it's going to have dropped in value enormously.
I think, there's pros and cons in every suburb and at every stage in the cycle. And I don't mean to sound like I'm dodging answering the question. It's just that there's not a silver bullet there. Like some buyers will be more interested in buying a property that's got value add potential because then if they buy that and add value to it, they're increasing their safety buffer if values do drop. So there could be more demand for that type of property. Other home buyers, they might be just interested in buying something that's fully renovated, so they don't have to do it.
Well, I think about, without giving away too much about the Bevo property, but it's a lovely property where, is it fair to say half of it has been done up really well and the other half is going to get there at some point?
Yeah.
Is that okay to say?
Well, our bathroom is 1969. In fact, we have downstairs our shower. It's sort of it's stipple painted like the old sort of there would have been old
Sponge.
shower blocks at the beach that where there's a sort of colour and then there's a sort of flecked paint over it. So we're pretty dated in some parts, and we've got some unpainted jib, and yet our living room and our downstairs is sort of all new and
It's looking
kitchen
good.
and everything. Yeah,
Because then I wonder, in the case of, say, if the Bevos were going to buy another house and they were going to sell the one that they're currently in, do they go, oh gosh, we're going to have to spend all that money to finish the house before we sell it, or would they not have to?
You know what I reckon?
you leave it. You leave something for someone to do.
I would talk to the real estate agent in that area
okay.
and say, what are people looking for? What difference is it making at the moment? Because it can change. It can change from suburb to suburb.
Actually, I know what the advice would be. The advice would be renovate it, because I remember when we rented it, because I bought off my landlord. We rented it about 10 years, 11, 12 years ago, something like that. And amazingly, and it's hard to imagine this, but it had sat vacant. And this is 200 metres from St Heliers Beach. It had sat vacant for 6 weeks, and no one was interested in it. Until I went to look at it, and even the real estate agent says, it's a bit tired. And I just looked at it, I went in with my mum, and she just turned around and whispered to me, she said, take it. And I couldn't see the problem with it. It was just that it needed, because of the location, but literally no one who wanted to live in that area wanted something that had a bit of work to do.
It was a doer.
And so I think that anyone who was going to buy in that area would want to be able to walk into something that was fairly...
And
whereas
and 12
other people,
years on, they've done half the job.
Yeah. Actually, it does stress me out.
So you just want to make sure, if you were thinking of selling, you'd want to make sure that you spoke to the real estate agent to make sure you weren't overcapitalising. You don't want to be spending more. I mean, it's pretty hard to overcapitalise in St Heliers, to be fair. But in the area you're in, if you can get the feedback from the real estate agent, they're going to be working hard to sell your house at the moment. So... they will be a good real estate agent will be completely honest with you and say, don't do this, do that.
Something that I've noticed is that so many houses are no longer going to auction, no longer priced by a negotiation. And it makes it a whole lot more fun, I have to say, if you just flicking through Trade Me to see what's for sale, or One Roof, obviously.
Well, they've finally got prices on them as opposed to POA.
Yeah,
POA,
exactly.
sale by auction. It's like,
They've all got prices on them.
Yeah.
I mean, not all of them, but I've never seen so many prices listed. Why is that?
It's because the market's a lot slower. So in a booming market, real estate agents will just about always push people to go to auction, because it's the best way to get cash unconditional offers as the person that's selling it.
Yeah.
So people have to do all their due diligence before they turn up to the auction, because they're cash unconditional buyers. So best offer for the person that owns the house in a booming market, it comes through an auction. Then if you're in an ideal world as a real estate agent, if they've got a couple of buyers that are interested in the same house, those home buyers, if they're emotionally attached to it, they go up and up and up until they reach their top dollar.
God, I remember when I first started looking at buying a property when I was living in Australia. God, I waited a long time after that. But I went to a few auctions, and they had a price. This is going back a long time, but the price expectation was X number of dollars. Let's say it was $250,000, or that was for a small property, and it would go for way more than that. And one day I turned up to look at a place, and I said to the real estate agent, because they tell you, this is the price indication. And I actually said to him, look, I've been to a couple of your auctions and they go well over the odds. Don't waste my time. What's this really going to go for? If this is my budget, he goes, no, don't waste your time. And I was like, why are you not telling people? Because they just wanted to get people to turn up and build the numbers. And I said, well, I'm never going to look with you again unless you tell me the truth.
Yeah, and sometimes agents do use that as a tactic. They'll say, it could sell for as little as this, to get more buyers qualified to bid at the auction, which will push prices up. But sometimes they honestly haven't got a clue how much that property is going to go for. If we look at recent sales, and I'm not a real estate agent, I'm just saying, based on our experience. So it's like if we look at recent sales, we can get an estimate for what a property's value is at any given time. But it depends on who's in the room on the day and how much they're prepared to pay. If they're emotional buyers, they go nuts.
We'll take a break and let's go to the phones when we come back on 0800 80 1080. You can text 9292. Debbie Roberts is our special guest, and she set up Property Apprentice. You can check out their website, propertyapprentice.co.nz. And give us a bell, 9292 as well, if you'd like to text through. A couple of things there. What properties have the best chance of holding their value in a softening market? Do you have any theories on that one? Because I've got a theory which every time I've thrown it out to an expert, they've said no.
God loves a trier.
Exactly. And I think at some point in time, you have to accept, well, that theory is wrong. But there's
Have you accepted it yet?
No, I haven't.
No.
Because I think they're wrong. And there's the vested interest. So clearly, I'm talking about the house that Amy and I own, and that if we sold it, we think it's a great entry-level property in a great location, and we want its value to have held. And in fact, we want you to pay heaps for it. But still be able... It's not on the market, by the way, but just this is hypothetical.
I thought you were giving us a scoop there.
But, that's like all people. We want our property to be magically one that wouldn't have lost any value, but all the ones that we want to buy, we want them to have just lost a truckload. So, what properties?
An understandable sentiment.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But if you've got any theories, because I've got some, Bevo's got some, what properties have the best chance of holding their value in a softening market? And then also, in the Bevo situation, pretending that the Bevos, I've never referred to your family as the Bevos.
No.
But if the Bevos were...
Beverages. You can use the full name, I think, for the family.
I think it's sort of funnier for the whole family to have the nickname.
Okay.
So if the Bevos were going to sell, do they spend all that money and all that sweat in doing up the 50% of the house that hasn't been done? Or do you just sell and let somebody else worry about
I think
that?
if I was buying another property, I would do everything I could to hang on to the one I've got now and just turn it into an investment property.
Yeah.
Unless I was really looking at trading up to the extent that I needed every spare dollar.
Yeah.
Which is probably, let's face it, if you're trading up, you probably need every spare dollar. That's the problem.
That's the case, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back in a moment.
My word.
It's the One Roof Radio Show. Tim Roxburgh, Tim Beveridge on the Weekend Collective. News Talk ZB at 4:24. News Talk ZB Weekend Collective with Tim Roxburgh and Tim Beveridge at 4:27. And she founded propertyapprentice.co.nz. Debbie Roberts is our special guest. And let's go to the phones. Graham is with us now. We're talking the current state of the market. Hi there, Graham. Graham, are you there? Hello.
No, hang on.
Oh, there we are,
there
Graham.
G'day.
Ah, hello.
You're talking about buying houses.
Yes.
The only time you buy a house when you go and buy a transportable. Surely in New Zealand, you buy the land and the assets and defects thereon, not the house.
Are you taking us literally when we talk about buying a house that we also meaning the land?
We talk about buying houses.
Yeah.
Years ago, there used to be land agents, and you bought the land.
Hey, Graham, do you trot this out at barbecues? I think it'd be quite tiresome.
Come again?
I said, do you trot this line of thought out at barbecues? Because I think it would be quite tiresome.
No. Do you reckon?
Well, you're being literal. You know that when we're talking about buying a house, that it includes the property. You're buying the freehold. It's just we're talking semantics, aren't we?
There can be leasehold.
Well, you're right, exactly. But I think it's assumed.
There can be a detrimental long-term lease. And being literal, it's smoke and mirrors, to be honest.
I guess in New Zealand, I think the current zeitgeist would be that when I talk about buying a house, the implication is that it's freehold. Or do you think that we need to drill? Do you think we need to be more specific?
The implication is, but the land is the most important part.
Graham,
that is 100% correct. I have to say, Graham is onto it with that one.
He sure is. Graham, does it bug you when people talk about their rego expiring on their car? Because that's actually called your vehicle license, and it's not called the rego, but annoying New Zealanders refer.
Is when we call our children.
Yeah, does that
kids.
bug you? Oh gosh, that's the worst, isn't it?
Well, the kids are the prodigy and nanny goats. You know, I mean, if we want respect, give respect.
Yeah. Well, wow. Graham, I'm coming back to the barbecue thought, but lovely to have you on the show. Thank you for the call, 0800 80 1080. And I think in life, it's okay to know when to be finicky and when to not be finicky.
Well, I think the occasion to be finicky is when your co-host says asterisk instead of asterisk. I was on solid ground with that one, Tim. But I think probably the time not to be finicky is in the property hour.
When you're talking about buying houses.
Although, if I was going to, I'm going to channel my inner Graham here.
Okay.
My inner Graham would be like, well, we are talking actually, I reckon I can mount this argument. You tell me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
We are talking about a major investment for people where they can have a 30-year mortgage and their lives can hinge on interest rates and the amount that they've paid for that property. You guys need to be very careful about what your language is, because if people mix up leasehold with freehold, it's all over. And so you need to be more responsible with your language and your definitions. Otherwise, God knows the damage you can do. No, I can't buy it.
No.
Debbie?
Look, it was an enthusiastic effort. And I mean, I guess this...
Stop turning my mic off.
There's confusion. I guess the issue is that if you were talking about freehold versus leasehold...
Or cross-lease.
Or cross-lease, then you would announce that. Likewise, if you were talking about just buying land that didn't have a home on it, then you would announce that. If you're talking about buying houses, then everyone knows what you're talking about.
Because I could, if I was literally, you could say, look, I'm buying a section. Oh, just a section. Are you going to build it on? Oh, no, it's got a house on it.
Yeah, people would be confused if you said that. Yeah.
Okay, exactly. Look, that was a bit of fun.
Well, we've milked that one. Okay. Debbie Roberts is a special guest. You can be on the program and we will be very nice to you. 0800 80 1080, text 9292. And Debbie set up Property Apprentice. So one of the things we were wondering, what properties have the best chance of holding their value in a softening market? And then as a flow on of the conversations we were having, if you're going to sell, do you need to do up your house before you put that home on the market? And Debbie, you were saying that it can vary quite enormously suburb by suburb. Why is that?
Just because for some people, they want to have that value add potential themselves. You know, I mean, like, how many times have you gone into an open home and thought, oh my God, look at the state of those curtains. I would never have picked those curtains in a million years. Or that carpet's horrible.
Oh God, don't come to my place.
So no, but my point is, if you renovate a house, it might not be to the taste of the person who's looking at purchasing it. So it's not going to add value to them at all.
Funnily enough, there are increasing numbers of houses that have no curtains when they're on the market. And because it makes the house look bigger.
Yep.
Wow.
And you don't tend to notice until you're actually really looking at the photos going, got no curtains. But yeah, it's one of the tricks done.
Actually, curtains are something that, I mean, I guess, would that be an argument for getting an interior designer in? Because anything that's been done by an interior designer, at least they've gone for incredibly bold choices because of what the clients wanted. I always look at a place that's been, and think they look pretty good. I think, oh yeah, that does look pretty good.
Yeah, they do have a bit of a talent there.
Not much to be offended about there.
But
actually, that's an interesting question as to, a lot of people make their own design choices, whereas actually, is it always worth getting an interior designer because they just...
And having it staged.
No. Well, look, the last time we sold our home, so the place that we were living in at the time, we got it staged. We were still living in it, but the stagers came in and just added a few little touches, and it made a massive difference.
You could have also, if you'd
They're
known...
better designers than me.
Well, I mean, from our previous guest, you probably could have even had Neva Retimanu standing outside dressed as a fruit, helping to sell it as well.
I think that would really...
If only she was here for this part of the conversation.
She would have laughed heartily. But, I mean, that adds at least 10 grand. But it is interesting, and you can ring through on this one, is that do you need to do those renovations before you put a house on the market? And are there certain things that are worth spending money on and other things that you don't have to worry? As in a grotty-looking bathroom, I feel that puts us off, as in my wife and I. And funnily enough, we saw a house come on the market, which, was on the market just a year ago, and it looked like a leaky home. I mean, as in we are 99.9% sure that it was a leaky home, and but in a nice suburb, a suburb we'd like to live, and it said in that ad a year ago that it needed a lot of work, and it looked rubbish. Like it's maybe the bones were good. Anyway, looked rubbish. Fast forward a year, it's on the market again. It's been done up spectacularly, and it looks amazing. And so we're like, wow, we never would have looked twice at that because it just had this horrible looking kitchen. The bedrooms looked disgusting, and the bathroom made you feel nauseous. And never mind the fact that it leaked. But someone bought it, has done it up, and now they're selling it. And so that maybe those things do matter.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends. Like for me personally, I'd much rather buy something that I can renovate and increase the value on myself.
So you don't mind a do-up?
No, I love them. Like
That's
My
a budget question,
favourite
though, isn't
types
it?
Well,
Because-
it depends. I mean, like, some of the best increases in values we've had have been on low value rental purchases. It's like I love walking into a house that's got fleas in the carpet. It's like great because everyone else will freak out.
Okay, that's
But I mean, something
That's a
that's
quirk, isn't it?
really manky and fully overgrown gardens. Those are easy fixes, but they put buyers off. So-
fleas. What's the easy fix to that? A fumigator, or you rip everything up?
Well, we had one property that had fleas in the carpet. We
Oh,
ripped
God,
up
it
the
makes me
carpet,
itchy
and
just
there
thinking.
were wooden floorboards underneath the carpet, and we discovered that the fleas had actually gone right down into the gaps in between the wood. So yeah, we had to we ripped out the carpet and then fumigated the house as well.
You didn't have to replace the floorboards then.
No, didn't. No, the fleas don't eat the wood. Just eat people.
Just on what I mentioned before about a house which has been leaky and then someone has spent a fortune recladding it. Is that house good to go, or are there going to be issues down the line again?
If it's got a code compliance certificate, then there shouldn't be any issues as far as getting lending goes. If they've done a patch-up job and haven't got a new code compliance certificate, then you're not going to be able to get lending.
But so if you bought a house that had leaked,
Yep.
but it's been fully done up, do you need to worry yourself? Do you think?
It's less of a risk. It's less of a risk if it's been fully reclad.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as no risk. It's not just plaster homes that leak. So, weatherboard homes can leak, all sorts of different
What do you think,
properties
Bev?
can leak.
If you saw a house that looked spectacular and you discovered that this had been a horrible leaky home that you could poke your finger through the wall, and somebody else has spent $500,000 doing up that house, but because the house's history is known to anyone who's thinking about buying it, it is actually a bit of a bargain.
I would be shouting Pete Wolfcamp a cup of coffee and a batch of croissant to go over it with me.
Yeah.
But I'm innately suspicious of anything that even has those architectural sort of design features that we saw with leaky homes, the no eaves and the sort of. So I'd be permanently suspicious. I'd need extra reassurance. Someone would have to say to me, "Look, Tim, this is 100%. You've got no problems."
Yeah.
The ones that I don't understand are the ones that they do all the repairs and then they reclad it in plaster. It's like, why would you do that? Because everyone goes and looks at it and thinks, is this a leaker?
Yeah.
Because it still looks like a leaker.
Actually, this is just something that's while we're just bantering, there is a really gorgeous house just along the street from us, which is on sale, and the thing that's, and as I walked past, I thought, and I looked at the map, and they've got this swimming pool and a beautiful deck and a spa pool, and it's some ridiculous size section. I think it's just probably actually an original quarter acre. And I was looking at it, I think that's really lovely. I was looking at the roof, and I noticed that on one part of the roof, gorgeous orange tiles, and on one of the main visible parts of the roof, all it needs is for someone to spray the old, I don't want to use products and things, but the old moss, mold and gun sort of remover.
Yeah.
But they haven't. And it's probably like a $4 or $5 million house.
Yeah.
And yet the roof just needs a clean. And I was thinking, or maybe it's just because the rest of the property is so good, they're thinking nobody's going to care about the state of the roof. But to me, I would have been, for a few $100 you could have paid a contractor to come around and make it look pristine.
Well,
because it was
drop
such
a flyer in their letterbox.
striking tiled roof. I'll just make him a crappy offer. I'll give you $500,000 for it.
What do you say? No questions asked. That's right.
No, as is. I'll take it as is.
As is. No questions asked.
Anyway, sorry, Debbie. But it's funny that the most basic things sometimes people.
Yeah, well, they might not have noticed. It's one of those things. Like if you've lived in a house for ages, you don't notice how dated it's become.
Yeah, it's true. And you don't notice the quirks, or you don't notice the things that are sort of mildly revolting that you would notice straight away if it was somebody else's house. Yeah. No, we must ask you before we get to the break, and you're welcome to ring through, by the way, 0800 80 1080. One of the things we're looking at is if you are going to sell and your house needs some work done, do you bother spending that money in order to sell it? Do you get the new kitchen? Do you get the new bathroom? Or do you just not worry because somebody else will do that for you? And that is figuring out how much more money that house could sell for if it does have a nice new bathroom or a nice new kitchen. 0800 80 1080. But let's have a quick look at the effects of the latest economic data on the market. Debbie, and by the way, Debbie started Property Apprentice. Debbie, any thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, so the GDP result was a bit of a surprise, probably for the Reserve Bank more than anyone, because they'd predicted that we were going to get 0.7% growth in that quarter, but GDP actually fell by 0.2%. So, it technically we'll be in a recession if the next quarter also shows a drop.
Yeah. So 2 quarters in a row declining as a recession.
Yeah, exactly. That's a technical recession, 2 quarters in a row with negative growth. So most economists are expecting that the next quarter isn't going to be negative. They are expecting growth in the next quarter because there's a number of reasons that we had slower growth in this last one. But, anything could happen. To be blunt, New Zealand's overdue for a recession. And my personal opinion is I'd rather have a recession than go into a situation where we've got stagflation, because that could be a lot harder to fix.
Stagflation. I know you're not an economist, so
No.
I've heard that explained a million times. I know we're not in the money hour. This is the property hour, but
There is crossover, though.
yeah, there is. But, well, of course, the economy affects the property market. I still don't get stagflation. I just don't get it.
I've done a lot of reading about this recently because our clients have been asking us questions.
So what is stagflation?
So stagflation is a period of time where you've got slow growth in the economy, but prices are rising. So inflation's high and you've got high unemployment. Okay? So at the moment, depending on what statistics you look at, we've got low unemployment.
Record low unemployment.
Yeah, I'd like to argue that. That's the next comment that we should talk about, because the way that they measure unemployment's completely changed. It's pretty hard to be counted as unemployed.
That's right, because we're digressing again, but there were in the last year or so, there's been 50,000 more people on a job seeker benefit, even though employment. So I don't know.
If you work for 1 hour, if you work for 1 hour a week, even if it's not paid work, but if you're working 1 hour for a family member, unpaid, you're not counted as unemployed. If you work for 1 hour in paid employment, you're not counted as unemployed. I'm pretty sure anyone who's working for an hour for free would consider themselves to be unemployed.
You're certainly not making a killing, are you?
No, exactly. So
1 hour for free.
So back to the stagflation.
Okay.
Safer topics. So the only cure for stagflation is basically a recession, and stagflation's like a balancing act between trying to bring the economy back into life, but also helping with that unemployment issue. So yeah, balancing act.
I'm trying to think of an analogy. I'm wondering if a weather trough is like stagflation. It just lingers and brings miserable weather for quite a long time, whereas let's just get get it to blow through, and then we can get on with the fine weather.
Absolutely, and that's like a recession, because recessions tend to be fairly short-lived. So I'd much rather go into a recession and come out of it sooner rather than later than go into stagflation where things just drag on, and the longer you're in it, the harder it is to fix.
I'm going to save that one for Tony Alexander. I'm feeling quite pleased with myself.
Yeah, use it again. I'll pretend I haven't heard it.
Like we normally do.
But, it's appropriate when almost every single day it's raining at the moment. Okay, we will be back in a moment. Don't forget, by the way, property of the week before 5 o'clock, including one of the most remarkable penthouses in the country. It's on the market. And then something completely different that I don't want you to forget about. If you are a fan of Elvis, if you would love to go to Elvis's home in Memphis, this is such a phenomenal prize and includes $5,000 spending money. We will have a queue to call for that massive prize celebrating the brand new Elvis film directed by Baz Luhrmann. That will be just after 5 o'clock. Let's take a break. 17 minutes now to 5. News Talk ZB. News Talk ZB, Weekend Collective and the One Roof Radio Show. Tim Roxburgh and Tim Beveridge here. This is our property hour. And speaking of property, propertyapprentice.co.nz is the website to check out. And it's the business that Debbie Roberts started up. Let's do some text messages on 9292. We've been talking which properties will have the best chance of holding their value in a softening market. Also, if you are thinking about selling and your house has got a grotty old bathroom or an embarrassing kitchen, do you need to spend thousands of dollars doing that up before you put the home on the market? What have you got on the text, Bevo?
microphone on. Well, a range of texts here. Hi again, team. There's no doubt the market will come off at least 30%, David reckons. There's no room to help with monetary policy anymore, and migration will be negative. Actually, that is a reason. The whole migration thing's an interesting factor, isn't it? David says, it won't be nice to not have to listen to people talking about how clever they've been making money out of property. Actually, the migration impact on the property market. Did I hear that something like 100,000 people have left already since we sort of opened up?
I don't know. I know that we've had negative net migration, but for the first time in ages. But
It wouldn't be as high as 100.
No, it's a prediction of 100,000. It's been 50,000. That's right.
Yeah, as in if you have the certain number of people go every single year and you have 2 years where those people don't go at all, then it makes sense that you'll have a doubling of that number in the first year that they can travel again.
Another one agrees that, there will be stigma on a reclad. And another one says, I'm a first-time buyer, definitely thinking about the possible... this was about, do you think about resale? And so this first-time buyer said, I definitely think about the possible reselling value down the track. I'm about to go unconditional on a property and was concerned about the property market going down. Went to an open home in Christchurch today just to see how busy it was. It's in the same location I'm purchasing in. Its offers of over 630,000 and it was packed. Entry-level houses in the right location are still booming, it seems. Well, I guess at that price.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
Yeah, Christchurch has only recently started to come off its boom, so...
off its boom?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's only recently started to show signs of slowdown. We saw the peak of the market, probably not much different from the peak of the market everywhere else, but there were still buyers in the market, and that's just started slowing down in that area. So, yeah.
Another one's just on the renovate. I don't know, this is a random one. In fact, I'm almost not going to read it out, but it's just such a quirky question.
Oh, God, it'll be fun.
Should you put a second fireplace in a house?
Oh, good question.
Oh, I was thinking, should you put a first in?
Yeah, I'd say get rid of the first and don't do the second.
Should you put a second fireplace in a house? How many people have fireplaces?
And who wants a second? Get a heat pump.
Well, any comment?
Well, I mean,
not really.
We've got an outside fire. That's quite nice.
Oh, yeah, that's good fun.
Gas fire
Yeah, I mean,
outside.
that is fun outside. But yeah, get a heat pump. That's better, and you'll
fires
be able to
look
talk about
pretty,
it. Because New Zealanders love talking about heat pumps. I mean, we had the earlier caller, we were talking about, good barbecue conversation. New Zealanders love nothing more than talking about how their life has changed since they got the heat pump put in. So if you haven't had a heat pump, you put it in, and then you can say, oh my gosh, well, how are you doing? I haven't seen you for a little while. How have things been? Yeah, good. How's the job? How are the kids?
Yeah.
We got a heat pump. Really? Yeah, people love talking about their heat pump.
Actually, something you and I were talking about earlier before the show, Debbie, about the language in the media around what's happening in the market, because there's been words like carnage, bandied around, when in fact, if you'd bought even just as recently as a couple of years ago, you're probably 20 or 30% up, and then it might come back 10 or 15%. I mean, what's your take on the language around real estate reporting these days? Because, dramatic headlines where, everyone wants to have readers. Yep. But, I mean, even if it was actually a 20% drop would sound pretty dramatic. But what do you make? Do you think the language is inflating the anxiety?
So the language that often gets reported in the media is median values or average values, and that can be quite easily skewed. Like it's simply the types of properties that have sold in that last month. So to give you an extreme, if this month, if the only properties that sold were small apartments, versus last month where the only properties that sold were $3 million houses, it would look as if the median value had plummeted.
That's true.
Whereas it's just the type of properties.
Exactly.
So the house price index is the one that you need to
You
look
wound
at.
people up, by the way, with your heat pump comment. Somebody says, such an Aucklander. You need a fire in colder areas, and most of us wouldn't dream of not having them. That's from Kirk.
I like looking at flames.
Yeah,
flames are pretty.
Oh, no, they are pretty. But
Great for date night, too.
But if you
got
struggle...
the bearskin rug, the glass of wine, the fondue.
It's true.
How 70s can I be?
It's true, but if you're someone who struggles to make conversation, you get that heat pump, and the conversation is sorted. We'll be back in a moment. Property of the week, a remarkable penthouse. It's back on the market 8 minutes to 5.
The One Roof Property of the Week on the Weekend Collective.
Okay, this one is dear to my heart because I used to have an apartment in the Heritage Hotel, formerly the Old Farmers Department Store in downtown Auckland. And the penthouse, which used to be the tea rooms, but it got converted into a penthouse, a 540 square metre penthouse, very New York loft style, and you've still got that amazing curved ceiling. And there were certain things that they couldn't touch due to its protected status. But anyway, so this amazing open plan penthouse is on the market again. And if you want to see that, if you want to live in the most, this is really, alongside the Pacifica, probably the most insane penthouse in the country, then at oneroof.co.nz. Thank you so much, Debbie Roberts from propertyapprentice.co.nz. Bevo, I understand lots of text messages about heat pumps.
Yeah, people are passionate about the heat pumps, and I think a lot of them have failed to recognise that our comments are kind of tongue-in-cheek, like, you guys are crazy, you can't make love in front of a heat pump. Well, actually, you can. It's just not the same as a fireplace.
Thank you, Debbie.
You're welcome. Can I say one more thing quickly?
No, you can't, but tell us off air. News is next.